back to another edition of Saint Spotlight. Today we are joined by Ash Coleman and Lindsay Dawson, both of which have been doing great work here in Thomas More's physics and astronomy departments and are here today to talk about their experiences. So thank you both very much for joining us and thanks for being here. First off, can you share what initially sparked your interest in pursuing astronomy as a field of study?
Well, originally it was just physics. I started in high school. I was kind of bored. I wanted to take another science class, and ended up taking AP Physics, and I got a C, actually. Then I took AP Physics 2, and I also got a C, and I was like, you know what? This is really cool. I like physics. It's challenging. It's fun. My mom was like, why are you going into, a field where you didn't do so well? I was like, it's really interesting to me. It's really fun, and I like being challenged. So somehow, I'm here, still making it.
Hey, C's get degrees, and especially in a class as difficult as physics, AP Physics, I commend you for going into that.
Yeah. I, as a child, was always interested in, like, how the world worked, especially with weather. I was really into weather. And so I, like, came here, and I was like, okay, like, I'm going to do physics, and then eventually I'll go on to do atmospheric science. Turns out I did a research experience a couple summers ago in Alabama, and it was for atmospheric science, and I did lightning research, and I was like, I don't really like this, and I much prefer astronomy, because at the time I was already doing research here. So now I'm pursuing astronomy, and I like that much better than what I was doing, but yeah.
Right on. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what makes your work important to you?
Originally I was doing astronomy, and I can still do that if I really want to. But I love, just like exploring, again, like Lindsay said, how things work. And space is one of those big frontiers, like unexplored frontiers. And it's really cool to be able to like get other people involved, like what Dr. Al does with his public outreach, and just like explain to other people, there are things out that we can't even reach yet that are just so absolutely brilliant to see. And I'm going into plasma, hopefully. And like a lot of people aren't super aware of this, but over 90% of known matter in our universe, not really on Earth, is actually made of plasma. So once we start to really understand that, we can also start to understand a lot more about astronomy too.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that about the 90%, and it makes me wonder what the other 10% could be. But that's amazing.
So my work, I have done like a few projects at this point, especially with Dr. Ryle with NASA. But my favorite research project has been working on gathering transits of exoplanets. So basically, when they eclipse their host star, gathering information on that. And that's really important to me because I'm really excited to see, like, is there life on other planets? Like, are those places that we could actually go one day? And I feel like that just has a lot of applications now, just especially since we're at a state in our world where things are uncertain, climate change, resources, and all that different type of thing. But that's really important to me, too. And then also there's another side of it where I'm really interested in outreach and educating people, like Ash said. And it's really important to me to share how excited I am for science and all of the wonders that I've experienced as a physics student and an astronomy student. And I'm really excited to share that with kids and maybe get them into what I do one day.
Right on. Now, and especially as you say, inspiring the next generation. Do you guys have something that you guys can attribute to back that, like a core childhood memory that got you latched onto science, like COSI or something like that?
Mine was actually, I really liked fossils a lot. So when I was a kid, we would go to the Falls of the Ohio State Park, which has like the largest exposed Devonian fossil beds in the world, and we would just walk along the river and see all the really cool fossils. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And science is still there, but the fossil thing is more of a hobby at this point.
And the fossils will still be there long after we're gone as well.
Exactly, yeah. My dad is actually a biologist, and so I was always like introduced to science and like living things and how things worked, but my brain was always more science and math oriented. As a kid, I struggled with reading, and I still do. I still joke that I have like the reading comprehension of a fifth grader, which isn't necessarily true, but still, it's a funny thing to joke about. And like I said earlier, weather was a big thing for me. Like I always liked to watch the clouds. Whenever we would have like a severe weather day, I was always like super excited. So that part of me is still there, and it's still like my inner child. I feel like when I learn something new, I'm like really excited about it.
Right on. Now, continuing on, can you share what accomplishment you are most proud of?
So this is kind of an internship that I got into this past summer with Cincinnati Observatory. And for those of you who aren't familiar, there we have like a historical observatory in Cincinnati. It's the birthplace of American astronomy, and during that internship, which is still ongoing, I was able to work with the education department and get experience with working with kids because I haven't worked with kids much at all, and so it was a part of me that was like really nervous to do it. But I'm really proud of doing work with them and helping serve underrepresented communities and like going out and educating children in those communities. And that's really helped me like grow into not just a scientist, but someone who likes communicating science. And that's something I'm really proud of and something that I'm hope to take into my career.
I guess I should have gone first. Mine's a little more selfish. I also, the internship that I did last summer, getting into it was like a lot of networking and like talking to people who were in the field, and I was very scared to do that because I was like, oh my god, there's all of these really cool people and like just in this field, and I don't know anything about this field because Kentucky doesn't really have plasma or like plasma physics, so we probably have plasma. But
90%, remember.
that's not Earth. That's mostly out in space. But anyway, so
Part of it's on Earth. I don't know.
90% of Kentucky is plasma. The other 10% is just polluted water.
Winchester sewer water.
Oh,
yeah. But anyway, so I got into this internship in Alabama, and first of all, I drove the farthest I've ever driven in my life, 8 hours south, and I was on that last hour stretch, and I was like, you know what, 7 hours back or 1 hour there, I gotta keep going. And I'm so glad I did because I got to do not only like just one little research project that they had set out for me, but I got to help almost every like grad student and every outside person who came into work on their giant magnet set up, or like I got to watch them take data and just like get this huge experience and just also this huge outpouring of like support from all of these people. And it just really was like, wow, this is someplace that I feel like I belong. And it just kind of solidified that like, okay, I'm in the right place. Physics is where I'm meant to be. And it's not really like an accomplishment, more so just like a feeling of belonging that makes me proud to have continued on in physics even when it got hard.
That is a great accomplishment. A lot of people fight and try to get that sense of belonging, and that's a great thing to finally find. Now, both of you guys were a part of NASA programs. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
So I started that back in 2021, I believe. I actually started doing a little bit of research back in 2020, 2019, but COVID interrupted that. So, but we, alongside Dr. Rao, he writes out a research proposal, and we write our like statement of how this is going to be helpful for our future and for our current life as a student. And we submit these research proposals to NASA Kentucky. And my current project is eclipsing binary systems, which are super cool and super important for fundamental like astrophysics, just because you can get a lot of their parameters, the stellar parameters of high mass stars, which is super like under researched. But it's been a really cool experience. It's a lot of like we do talks and presentations. At this point, I've done upwards of 10 talks. I'm doing 4 this semester, so but it's just like it's a lot of it's not just oh you get experience in research, but you also get experience in communicating and you get experience in writing papers and making presentations and a little bit of like seeing how a proposal is written and what that's necessary for your future career, hopefully. But
Yeah, my experience it's been really interesting. The way I got started like into NAS Kentucky was like kind of it feels like happenstance, but maybe it wasn't. I was like in Dr. Ryle's Physics 2 lab, and he was like, "Hey, like, do you guys want to help out the observatory?" And I was like, "That sounds great. Why not?" So like I was just originally planning on working there, like going up and like maybe like helping like a senior take data or whatnot. And then over the summer, Dr. Ryle was like, "Hey, like, would you want to do research and like maybe get a grant?" And I'm like, "Money sounds great." And so I didn't even like think about it, get the grant, and now like we've had grants ongoing for the past 3 years, which that in and of itself is awesome because we don't have to work through school. Like we don't have to go out and get a job at retail or something like that. We get to do what we enjoy doing and also get paid for it and also be a student, which is a big part of it for me as well. But I've been doing work with variable systems, so pulsating variables, which are fundamental objects in astronomy, exoplanets, like I mentioned, and now cataclysmic variables, which are very hard to understand, but they tell us more about massive stars and supernova explosions and things like that. But working with NASA Kentucky and Dr. Ryle especially has just been fantastic because not only do I have research experience, outreach experience, but then I also just have, just like Ash kind of mentioned previously, a sense of belonging in the field. Like I feel like now I'm like an actual researcher, I'm a physicist, which is great going into the future and going into a career.
That sounds great, and it's insane to see how that just first step of hey, you want to help with the observatory led you to here. It's
Yeah.
insane to see how those little decisions can lead to where we are today.
Yeah.
And lastly, what advice do you have for students who have been thinking about getting into astronomy?
Honestly, like going on to what you just said, a lot of it is one, just do it. 2, talk to people. Talk to people who are in the field. Talk to other people who are thinking about going into the field. If you go to somebody's talk, stay after. Ask them a question. Get those contacts. That's when I originally was going to come to Thomas More, I got recruited to play softball, and I asked them, I was like, "Do you guys have an astrophysics program? Because that's really what I want to do." And she was like, "Well, we don't have an astrophysics program. We have just a physics program, but we do have an astronomy like professor who does research and stuff if you would want to talk to him." And so, I talked to him, and I was like, "Wow, he's really cool." I kind of want to do what he's doing. He did some like cool research on supermassive black holes. We can't do that here, but
Unfortunately.
But so I talked to him, and that's why I'm here at Thomas More. And then at the conferences that we've been to, they're conferences for undergraduate women in physics. I've talked to people who are in those conferences. I'm like, "Oh, hey, the research that you're doing is really cool." And then we just kind of get talking, and they're like, "Hey, this is an internship that you might like. You should apply." Or here's some research that I've done if you want to read about it. Or if you want to, like, look at the data that I've done and see if you can do something with it. So honestly, my biggest advice is just talk to people and find out their experience, and maybe, you'll be presented with a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, just to say something a little bit unrelated, Dr. Ryle is also the reason why I'm here. So just taking a minute to boast about Dr. Ryle, he's the best, really cares about his students, really cares about this physics program and Thomas More in general. So he's the best.
Yes.
Going into advice that I would have for students going into astronomy or physics, my advice would be to try everything. Don't just be like, I want to get into astronomy, I want to do math. Try everything, ask people questions, ask people about their research, get into conferences, get involved with research, get involved with education. Just do anything that you can to expose yourself to everything. That way, like, you can say, like, maybe I like this, maybe I don't. But that way, going into a career, you have that freedom to be like, I've tried this, now let's see what I actually want to go with.
That is very well said. I guess kids have to see what sticks to the wall, much like a physics, experiment, throwing something to the wall and see what sticks. So, and I agree. I attribute a lot of what I've done here by simply just asking questions as well. So you guys are on the right path of getting to where you want to be. So. Thank you again so much for sitting down with us and talking about your experiences. And thank you all back home for watching another edition of Saint Spotlights. Be sure to tune in for the next one. See you around.